Hello from Heirloom Books at 6239 North Clark Street in Chicago, Illinois. I'm Jeff Helgeson. Although having published as many as 47 books, including 10 novels, worldwide travel narratives, and lengthy expository texts, British author Aldous Huxley is primarily known to the general public for two of them. One provided a name for the Live Hard, Die Young 1960s American rock star Jim Morrison's band, The Doors, and the other envisioned a blueprint for submission to velvet glove, iron-fisted totalitarianism based upon selective breeding, strict social stratification, and personal gratification through the regular use of euphoria-inducing psychotropic drugs. I mean, of course, the Doors of Perception and Brave New World. More about each of those works later. As explained in Aldous Huxley, a biography by Sybil Bedford, a family friend with the author through her mother for over 40 years, the British writer was born on July 26th in 1894, the third of four children, and the grandson of the famous agnostic who in fact invented that term, and Charles Darwin's supporting biologist Thomas Henry Huxley, and the grandnephew of the decline of religious belief lamenting author of the poem Dover Beach, Matthew Arnold. In 1902, Aldous Huxley's mother, Julia Frances Arnold Huxley, established a private boarding school for girls, and her son Aldous began preparatory school a year later and was enrolled at Eton in 1908, the same year as his mother passed away from cancer. Then, in 1911, at the age of 16, Aldous developed a serious visual condition, keratitis punctata, and almost became blind, teaching himself to read Braille before beginning to partially recover and writing his first novel, which is now lost, then entering Oxford, where his brother Trevian had also been a student a year prior to the beginning of World War I, before the author's brother experienced a nervous breakdown following a socially unacceptable romantic involvement, being sent to a rest home where, in August of 1914, he hung himself in a wooded area adjacent to the facility. Aldous Huxley, being rejected for military service due to his poor eyesight, then spent the first few years of the war working on a farm owned by Philip and the highly eccentric literary patron Adeline Morel. There, Huxley came in contact with such conscientious objectors as philosopher Bertrand Russell, economist John Maynard Keynes, a mythologist Robert Graves, and novelist D.H. Lawrence, who became a close personal friend. It was on the grounds of Garringston, that farm, in the summer of 1915, that Huxley also met his future wife, Maria Nyes, essentially a war refugee from Flanders, whom he married 4 years later, the couple taking on the responsibilities of parenting the following spring while the young husband had been working as a teacher. while having also worked as a drama critic and at House and Garden magazine, as well as publishing poetry. In 1921, Aldous Huxley released his first novel, Chrome Yellow, a generally satiric work that seems to look back upon his experience at the Garrington farm, thereby offending both Bertram Russell and Lady Adeline Morell, who'd additionally felt that she had been subjected to ridicule by D.H. Lawrence in Women in Love. 3 years later, with a 4-year-old son at home, Huxley began an obsessive love affair with the wildly bohemian Nancy Kennard, a self-impoverished heir to the Kennard steamship fortune, but his wife, Maria, soon succeeded in moving her husband and herself to Italy, taking up residence in a British expatriate community that, according to Sybil Bedford, Huxley characterized as consisting of sodomites and middle-aged lesbians, before setting off on a worldwide cruise, concluding with an exhausting adventure travel muleback journey across southern Mexico that included an incident within a cantina during which a local patron, for some reason, became offended by the author, drew a revolver, and tried to shoot the visiting writer, causing Huxley to hide behind a pillar before escaping and then traveling by train with his wife to New York City, where news was received regarding the death of his father, and the couple immediately returned to England. By this time, Aldous Huxley had signed a contract to produce 2 books a year, which ultimately resulted in the publications of such works as Mortal Coils, Antic Hay, Do What You Will, Those Barren Leaves, Point, Counterpoint, and Brief Candles, before undertaking an intended send-up of the futuristic optimism of people like H.G. Wells in what may well be, in contemporary terms, Mr. Huxley's most significant novel, Brave New World, and then some 26 years later, providing its cautionary social commentary sequel, Brave New World Revisited. In both his fictional work, set several centuries after the development of the assembly line during the year of our Ford 632, and in his critical essay, Huxley addresses the prospect of a totalitarian dictatorship based upon pleasure and the distraction of its populace, often by use of a recreational psychoactive drug called soma, rather than upon Niccolo Machiavelli's notions of rule through fear of reprisal. What Huxley describes is a brave new world of propaganda and fake news brainwashing, the dismantling of education beyond applied technical training, and the banning of all books other than instruction manuals, without a need to rewrite history, as his one-time student at Eton, Eric Blair, writing under the pen name George Orwell, depicted in his novel 1984, but simply by ignoring it, possibly based upon Henry Ford's assertion that history is bunk. Within the latter of these 2 works, Huxley observed, government through terror works on the whole less well than government through non-violent manipulation of the environment and of the thoughts and feelings of individual men, women, and children. And this was, of course, well before the advent of personal computers, cell phones, and social media, such as TikTok and Truth Social, not to mention reality TV competition game shows, and the influence of such influencers as those who virtually made their public personas not by being successful at something, but rather by pretending to be celebrities until they became them, or merely appearing to be accomplished truth tellers through playing at being knowledgeable on television and through other medium is the message means, faking it until making it, sometimes, in fact, upon the very biggest of the world's most significant stages. In his post-World War I poem, The Wasteland, T.S. Eliot asserted that he would show you fear in a handful of dust. Yeah, but Huxley does it by the means of perpetual distraction and the ready availability of mood-altering drugs within an imagined context of a futuristic culture in which technology has addressed all of the most basic desires of its population, producing impulse gratifying subjugation by such means as encouraging promiscuous sexual intercourse without consequence due to birth control, and the total genetic engineering management of human reproduction in order to create a society that is neatly divided into inferior, middling, and highly intelligent groups consisting of low IQ gammas, higher ability epsilons, and inherently superior alpha pluses, menial workers, generally competent functionaries, and a ruling elite, all of whom are inherently anti-intellectual and prone to willful adherence to alternative facts that reinforce their subjective beliefs, preferring self-indulgence over facts and personal comfort over truth. Oh, brave new world that has such people in it. As William Shakespeare has the character of Miranda observe in his Farewell to Theatre play, The Tempest, the line from which the titles of both these works had been deriven when the daughter of the magician Prospero, who's been living most of her life on an isolated island away from civilization, first sees a group of stranded, young, able-bodied seamen. Essentially, Aldous Huxley demonstrates in Brave New World what an unscrupulous, amoral, ethically compromised government can accomplish through manipulation and the triggering of regular little bias-reinforcing neurotransmitter bursts of pleasure-producing dopamine by exploiting people's prejudices, while also providing for them in order to assume control and get individuals to advocate their personal freedom in favor of expedient distractions and an artificial sense of security, in essence, fulfilling Thomas Jefferson's observation that a people willing to sacrifice freedom for security will have neither. Advancing beyond these specific concerns in the late 1930s, after relocating before the Second World War to Hollywood, California, Huxley became influenced by a Hindu Swami while working as a screenwriter on such film projects as Madame Curie, Pride and Prejudice, and Jane Eyre, earning as much in what today's money would be $20,000 a week, and using much of that, at the suggestion of his guru, to help transport Jewish and left-leaning artist refugees out of Hitler's Germany. Also, continuing with his fiction writing, in 1936, Aldous Huxley published Eyeless in Gaza, Its title, derived from the blind 17th century poet John Milton's Samson Agonistes, regarding the head-sheared and blinded Hebrew strongman who'd been set to work turning a giant grinding stone before pulling down the temple of his persecutors, killing them and himself. The novel unfolds in a non-literary narrative form, beginning with its central character, Anthony Beavis, looking through a photo album and then hopscotching back and forth across a period of time extending from 1902 to the mid-1930s, involving Mr. Beavis in love affairs with an older pregnant woman, Mary, and later with the daughter she had been carrying at the time, Helen, characters who were seemingly based upon biographer Sybil Bedford and her morphine-addicted mother, and ultimately ending following an incident like the one in which Huxley had experienced the shooting in the Mexican cantina, with Anthony Beavis embracing Buddhism, becoming a pacifist, and coming to advocate for the systematic improvement of the individual through meditation and conscious mindfulness in order to thereby enhance the collective human condition. In 1939, Huxley published a novel titled After Many a Summer Dies the Swan, in which, according to its elephant paperback back cover, a Hollywood millionaire, possibly like in Orson Welles' film Citizen Kane, based upon William Randolph Hearst, with a terror of death, takes up a preposterous effort to live indefinitely. Then, with the beginning of the Second World War, Huxley and his wife moved from Hollywood, and acquaintances like William Randolph Hearst and Charlie Chaplin, as well as Thomas Mann and Greta Garbo, with whom Marion Huxley, it is rumored, may have had a same-sex affair, as well as other displaced person intelligentsia of Western Europe, going to take up residence in the Mojave Desert during the Normandy invasion year of 1944. Time Must Have a Stop was published. Then, following the war, with the atomic bomb taking place on, or being dropped on Hiroshima on the 6th of August in 1945, Huxley wrote a book called Ape and Essence. Much of this work is written in the form of a screenplay discovered in the post-atomic war year of 2108, when a group of archaeologists excavate the city of Pompeii-like remains of Hollywood, California, in order to try to determine what life had been like in the 20th century, and of course also revealing what it was like in the 22nd. In 1952, Huxley published a non-fiction work called The Devils of Loudun, that 19 years later, film director Ken Russell adapted, featuring Vanessa Redgrave as a sexually repressed nun who accuses a priest of witchcraft, and which was condemned by the Catholic Church, earning an X rating and being banned in most parts of the world. Then, in 1953, as explained by Sybil Bedford, Huxley took mescaline for the first time and wrote about his experience in a book published the following year called The Doors of Perception, a title derived from William Blake's statement, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite, giving Jim Morrison's 1960s band its name. This book, of course, has now served to influence global popular culture for over 70 years, creating controversy and converts to psychoactive drug experimentation among generations of people who have, in many instances, never heard of its author. Aldous Huxley also became an early advocate, well before Turn On, Tune In, Drop Out, Timothy Leary, of taking LSD, and then criticized by Time magazine in an article claiming that he would prescribe mescaline for all of mankind, Huxley responded in a letter to the editor stating, "I merely suggested that it might be a good thing if psychologists, sociologists, and pharmacologists were to get together and discuss the problem of a satisfactory alternative to the drawbacks of alcohol," prefiguring the Huey Lewis 1984 song, "I Need a New Drug," by over 3 decades. The Genius and the Goddess then appeared in 1955, and then Aldous Huxley's last novel, Island, was published in March of 1962, and it has been described as a utopian manifesto in contrast to the dystopian vision of Brave New World, addressing such issues as overpopulation, pacifism, ecology, democracy, and mysticism in a narrative set on a forbidden semi-tropic island that a British journalist shipwrecks himself upon in order to gain access to it as a means of trying to arrange for the exploitation of its untapped natural resources, finally ending with his taking a culturally sanctioned hallucinogen and the island coming under attack with the prospect of being overtaken by the relentless forces of materialistic capitalism. Aldous Huxley died of natural causes on November 22nd, 1963, having been given LSD to ease his process of death by his second wife a few years following the passing away of Maria, on the same day that the Chronicle of Narnia's author, C.S. Lewis, died, and United States President John F. Kennedy was assassinated from the window of a book depository building in Dallas, Texas. What Huxley left behind, however, was a visionary collection of literary work that foresaw the future of humanity's path of least resistance inclinations and proposed individual approaches to what Edward Gibbon in 1776 had termed the inevitable consequence of inordinate greatness in his description of the decadent social trends and political absolutism which ultimately led to the fall of the Roman Empire, trends, of course, which continue to challenge world civilization today. I'm Jeff Helgeson. Heirloom Books is located at 6239